Hello and welcome to Sales Whiteboard Workout, where we talk about the sales skills to help you win the game. I'm your host, Julian Redding, and thank you for spending time with me today. Now, when I first started leading sales teams, I had a pretty successful start. Quarter on quarter, I was a hero until it all went wrong. Nearly 75% of my team missed their target. All the work I'd done leading the team had simply been crushed by us missing so badly. We'd run the same process but failed. Why? Well, after a conversation with Mark, who was my leading sales guy, who also missed, he said, "Julian, I was let down by my champion having a bad relationship with the economic buyer." "Have you met him?" I said. "No, my champion did that for me." I went through the pipeline and spoke with all the team. All had the same. They hadn't met the economic buyer. Now, you may have a killer pain, a strong champion and powerful metrics, but if the economic buyer isn't on your side, there's a big chance your deal won't close. So in today's podcast, I'm going to cover just who the economic buyer is and why he or she is so important, and actionable ways to get access to the economic buyer or anyone else who's a VIP for that matter. So who is the economic buyer? The economic buyer is the ultimate decision maker, the person with the discretional right to spend, the one who, when says yes, nobody else will formally or informally say no, or vice versa. Now, I know many of my friends in the community are saying, "Julian, there's no such thing as a single buyer anymore." And that's true, but even when there's a board that has to approve the decision, there's one person in the customer's buying process that gives final approval. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the economic buyer. Why is it mission critical to meet the economic buyer? Whether you meet the economic buyer or not, he or she is going to be the one deciding on your deal in the end. So wouldn't it make sense to meet in person and understand if she or he supports your project? Now, we all know these are busy people, economic buyers, and don't want to meet salespeople or vendors. But let's think about it from the other side of the table. If you had a huge chunk of money on something, you'd want to make sure that that money was well spent. So, of course, you'd want to know, is this the right vendor? Do they understand us? Will they be able to deliver? That's why it's critical to meet the economic buyer early enough in your sales cycle so you can bridge with him and her and understand what a successful outcome will look like from their perspective. At the same time, you want to make sure that the project is relevant and worth pursuing for the economic buyer. When you meet with the economic buyer, make sure you have the following questions on your agenda. Do you sponsor? Do you sponsor this project? What would success look like for you? And what are the next steps if we fulfill the criteria? Last question. Who else needs to be involved, and when can we get the deal closed? Who else? So these questions will enable you to align to his or her criteria, address potential concerns, and lay out a plan to successfully deliver. This approach will generate value specific to the economic buyer's objectives and encourage him or her to sponsor your deal and drive the next steps with you. So what's the impact of meeting this economic buyer? I'm going to ask you to test this for yourself. Every time I've met with the economic buyer early enough, I've always got him to sponsor the project and outline a possible close date with him or her. That pushed my chance of closing up to 90% in that quarter, going on my own metrics. When we don't meet with him or her, our chances plunge, or mine did, to less than 50%. Try it out for yourself. First, take a look at all the opportunities that you had in forecast last quarter. Next, highlight all the ones where you met the economic buyer. Now check the deals that you won or lost, or simply dramatically decreased in size. Going back to my disaster quarter that I started with, in 5 out of 6 deals that we closed, we met the economic buyer. All of the ones that we didn't meet the economic buyer. So it's critical for our success. But how do you know who the economic buyer is? Who the economic buyer depends on the size of the company and the amount of the deal. While smaller purchases will sometimes be approved by managers lower in the organisation, our deals, 7-digit deals, they could be evaluated by the economic buyer and all the way up to board level, and then it can get trickier. The economic buyer might not even be in the department that you're directly selling to. They could be sitting in finance, business, in the IT department, or you might even want to check out potential economic buyers in unexpected places like an architecture board, a holding group, or the overseas headquarters. But don't be put off. It's not mission impossible to discover who has the discretionary right to spend. So how can you identify the right person, I'm hearing you saying? By simply asking the people who you're in contact with already, who has approved projects of a similar size in the past. Now, a great person to ask would be your champion, but other good sources could be a business partner, an internal consultant, colleagues that have dealt with your prospect in the past. Once you've come into contact with the potential economic buyer, you need to cross-check if that person really is the economic buyer. Otherwise, you run the risk of derailing your deal down the line, like I did once. The problem many salespeople have is that they find it awkward to ask the person they finally managed to meet with, is he or she the economic buyer? That's why I worked out this question for you that allows you to be both assertive and respectful with the person you think might be the economic buyer. If we both come to an agreement, is there anybody else that formally or informally needs to be involved to approve this project or purchase? The answer will allow the potential economic buyer to disclose if he has the final approval power or if other people need to be involved in signing off the deal. How to get access and meet with the economic buyer is a simple thing once you know who the economic buyer is, but you still need to find a way to meet with him. Since economic buyers are usually the busiest people in a company, that's not exactly a task that, if you haven't found insights out, is going to be easy for you. They spend most of their time in meetings. They get tons of work piling up on their desk, and they hate to meet with salespeople because usually we don't add much value to the economic buyer's strategic goals. So you need to give him or her an extremely good reason to meet with you. But there's a simple way, because all economic buyers, they're all the time stressed and worried about improving their business, making mistakes. They often rely on a circle of people they trust as subject matter experts to help them evaluating and making decisions. By nurturing one of these inner circles to find insights or to become your champion, you have a chance to build up enough value that your champion will arrange access to the economic buyer. Here's how. Build up a primary business case. Don't talk about product. Think business improvement and build a strong case for your offer by relying on use cases, insights with quantified benefits. Together with your champion, uncover potential savings, productivity gains, revenue increases, etc. that will bring your solution to the table, creating value and building a compelling ROI. Once you've developed a relevant case underpinning the value of your solution, your champion will want to bring you in front of the economic buyer, defining quid pro quo delivery. Most average salespeople try to build relationships by giving away information, time and resources to their prospects without asking for anything in return. As a result, they end up spinning in place without really making in progress. Think advancement versus continuation and reciprocity in persuasion. To keep this from happening to you, great reps think quid pro quo all the time. They know that creating a smooth buying process is critical for their success. They need to ask for what they need in order to advance their sales. For example, if you've got a labour-intensive trial period, you can make it a requirement to first meet with the economic buyer, getting his or her sponsorship, see what I did, early on before proceeding with the trial. Many salespeople feel really uncomfortable requesting such a meeting because they're afraid of a no and putting the client off. What they don't realise is that they manoeuvre themselves into a subservient role, a role that prevents them from being in the driving position and controlling the deal. If the results of the trial are something that will make your champion look good internally, if it's in his or her best interest to arrange a meeting with the economic buyer, as one of my reps once said, I explained to the client that we both run our businesses and mine is to close deals for my company. I'm happy to support him or her in a decision process, but at the same time, I owe my company an explanation on where we spend our resources. That's why we need the economic buyer's approval. I love that. It might take a bit of swagger, a bit of confidence, but this is a great way to establish yourself as an equal counterpart and elevate you in doing business on a peer-to-peer level. Use your own executives. This once helped me secure a $10 million deal in less than 15 minutes. A story for another day. I've been trying to meet the economic buyer for one of the most important deals ever, but she was completely overloaded and didn't have the time. So I used my CEO's visit to London to arrange a meeting with my prospect's economic buyer. She was on the way to the airport, so she gave us 50 minutes at a crowded, run-down Waterloo station before it was renovated in the UK. Nevertheless, the meeting went well. We prepared on both sides. We nailed down key commitments and we closed that deal 8 weeks later. A story for another day. But whether you meet with him or her or not, the economic buyer is going to be a major part of the decision. Meeting the economic buyer clears the fog of war and lets you see exactly what's needed to drive your deal to closure. That's why it's critical to meet the economic buyer early in the sales cycle so you can understand his or her criteria and align your strategies. Just be relevant and business orientated to spend time with the economic buyer. This is what it takes to get the economic buyer's commitment and support to close the deal in a planned time frame. It's not easy to get on their schedule, but it pays off big time to know somebody high in the account that supports you. Once they are bought in, they will guide you and push things through internally to finalize the deal on time. Remember to get those insights from your champion. When you meet your economic buyer, prove value. Think about all the things that we spoke about today. Now, this was quite an intense session. The economic buyer is really a critical part of our whole sales process and is vital to us closing more deals. Please do watch this again because there's a lot of content I've put into just one podcast. I'd like to thank you for staying with me today. It's been a real pleasure. Hope to see you again soon.